Hi, I'm Eric Ross, and I conducted my interview of my grandfather, Carl Ross, and of my father, Mark Ross. My grandfather and father have been in the real estate business together since 1977. My grandfather's company is called Ross Realty. My father's company is called M. Ross Realty, and their storage facility is called Security Self Storage. The first question I asked was geared mainly towards my grandfather, and this question was, how did you start out in the real estate business? My grandfather explained to me that prior to the real estate business, he was in the textile business. He partnered with my great-grandfather, and they produced sweaters together for about 20 years. And the reason that they left the textile business was because overseas imports from China beat out the competition in the US, and Chinese manufacturers were able to sell their textiles for a lot cheaper in the United States than domestic producers. And this made their business less profitable, and they looked for an out. And they decided to sell the textile business and use the money to buy real estate. So the next question I asked them was, why did you decide to go into the real estate business? I wanted to know what my grandfather's thoughts were before going into the business about what he thought were the reasons that this would be a good business. And the first reason he said was he thought real estate was a good business because it provided for residual income. And he said even on days when he wouldn't be working, he would still, after having established these buildings, be able to have an income for himself. And he thought this was the lifestyle he was looking for in the real estate business. But the main reason that they got into the real estate business was the opportunity that they saw on Long Island at the time. And my grandfather said that the population was growing during the 70s on Long Island, and he felt so confident in buying buildings in this specific location on Long Island that all he had to do was buy the land, and he would be able to profit from the increasing value of the land. But he decided to develop on the land instead, and now he's in the real estate business. So a part of this opportunity that he mentioned was a man by the name of Robert Moses during the late 70s had a plan at the time to create a bridge that would span from southeastern Long Island to Connecticut. And this bridge would change the entire dynamic of Long Island. Because right now on Long Island, there's a lot of traffic when you want to leave the island, and it's very difficult to get off the island because there really is only one spot where you can do that, and that's far west. And this bridge would provide for two locations in which people could leave the island, and it would allow for a lot better traffic flow, and a lot more business would come to Long Island because it would be a lot better place to be as far as materials being able to be shipped in and out of the island, and this new project would allow for growth on Long Island. And in hopes of this project happening, my grandfather bought land in an area where this bridge would let out, and he hoped that this area would grow in population and land values would grow, and he was basically depending on this bridge to happen. Now, this bridge never ended up being built, and I asked my grandfather what happened after the bridge wasn't built. Was his plans totally ruined? And his answer was no. He used one of his properties to build a self-storage facility. He said that in accordance with trying to be cutting edge at the time, he knew that there were no other storage facilities in the county, and he created the first self-storage facility in Suffolk County on Long Island. And he knew that if the population were expanding, which it was, to eastern Long Island, people would need a place to store their goods, moving from house to house. And it turned out to be a good idea and was a successful business. So I asked them, what about their real estate business keeps them ahead of the competition? And the first aspect is that my father, Mark, is an engineer. And back in the 70s, when they were developing some of these buildings, my dad was able to custom build the buildings and include features that we knew would be desirable 30 years down the road, which they still are today. And a part of these features are high ceilings, concrete block design, steel frames, and also room for further expansion and subdivisions in some of our buildings. And these are only things that people who build their buildings are able to have input on, and had we just bought the buildings, we might not have had such specificity in design. The next reason that we are currently ahead of the competition is because we got in the 1970s and we developed these buildings when prices were low. We have a price advantage over the competition. And my father says that he's able to offer better prices for a lot of his industrial properties that he's had since the 70s than much of the competitors in the area, and this keeps him ahead of the competition. Now, the next reason is something that my grandfather prides himself on, and this is an in-house maintenance crew. And we do basically 95% of all repairs on our buildings with an in-house maintenance crew that my grandfather has hired and handpicked. And this has been one of our main advantages over the competition. Another reason that my grandfather says we are successful is because of his conservative investment strategy. My grandfather said that it's easy to get in over your head in the real estate business and over expanding, and my grandfather feels that he's always maintained a conservative investment strategy when buying new properties and never overextended himself, and this is what has been able to keep him profitable in the real estate business. I asked the two of them what the major difficulties are in the real estate business, and they both answered taxation. And of course, they both answered maintenance. One of the biggest issues in the real estate business is making sure your buildings are maintained and making sure your tenants are happy. Just last winter, we had one of our buildings where the roof caught on fire, and that entire section of the building was ruined from a roof fire. And we needed to replace that entire roof within the course of a weekend to make sure those tenants could pick back up for business on Monday. And as a real estate landlord, these are things that you take responsibility for, and you need to make sure your tenants are in a position to conduct their business every day. And the biggest difficulty that this business is facing right now is because most of the properties that my grandfather and father own are industrial properties. It's important that we have a lot of industry here on Long Island and a lot of manufacturing happening here on Long Island. And this is actually not the case right now. A lot of industry is leaving Long Island, and this is one of the major difficulties we face and something that we need to account for in the future of the business. So I asked my father what he thinks the future of the business is, and my dad says that one thing in the near future that's going to keep us ahead of the game is offering competitive pricing like I mentioned earlier. My dad said that you need to take advantage of the fact that we were able to create these buildings when prices were low and a lot of other competitors did not have this advantage, and in order to get people into our buildings right now, we are going to offer competitive pricing for the next few years. But looking into the farther future, my father says we need to do like what my grandfather did and look for the next up and coming area, an area where population is going to be expanding in this country and an area where land values are going to be increasing. And one idea my father has might be to sell some of what we have on Long Island and move to the city where the economy is more stable and doesn't fluctuate as much as Long Island. And the other thing that my father looks for into the future is maybe moving more into the commercial real estate side of the business. We have a lot of industrial real estate and not as much commercial real estate, and my father thinks that the commercial real estate is more successful right now on Long Island than the industrial real estate is. And here we have a few pictures of some advertisements that we place for some of our buildings. This is an advertisement for a 2,500 square foot industrial space in a condominium complex that we own. This is an advertisement for a commercial space that we have. And moving forward, this right here is a property right along a main road. It is a retail space, about 18,000 square feet. Now, this is the building that I referred to earlier that had the fire on the roof this last winter. It's a 20,000 square foot. That's actually just one partition of the building. There's about 4 of those going down. And now that's exactly across the street from the last building you just saw. And that's a 13,000 square foot division of that building. And that is Mark Ross and Carl Ross's real estate business interview. Thank you.